Join me today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, where I review the 2023 season for the Miami Marlins.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB or our regular Locked On Fantasy page, which is LO_FantasyMLB. You can see I'm riding solo today. Matt's got the day off. We got a few more solo episodes left this month, and then November, we're going down to 3 days a week, and Matt and I will be together. Right now, you can find us on social media platforms, and if you're listening on one like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel, also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And guys, join us on Subtext. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging. Matt and I are going to be dropping our rankings soon for next season. Keeper, Dynasty, all that good stuff. So you're going to want to be locked on for that. Join us on Subtext to get first access to those. But guys, real quick, before we get into the Marlins, I got to talk to you about GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price always guaranteed. So, all right, guys, we're reviewing the 2023 season for the Marlins. They were all right, a little bit better than, some expected. Honestly, they definitely did better than I expected. With a record of 84-78, they made the playoffs. First round exit, they really didn't make too much noise. But hey, you know what? They got out there, winning record this year, and it's really interesting that they did that with a lot of their big names hurt. Let's start off with one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Let's talk about Jazz Chisholm Jr. So with Jazz, we had a lot of hype coming into this year. We really thought his age, 25 season was potential to be a breakout, but, he wound up getting hurt again as always. Let's talk about those stats, though. 97 games for Jazz, 352 at-bats, 50 runs, 12 doubles, 2 triples, 19 homers, 51 RBIs, 22 steals, and a 250 batting average. So we all know the upside here is pretty much 30-30 for Jazz. Has very good speed, has very good power. The batting average leaving a little bit to be desired. I don't know if he's ever going to be better than like a 250, 260 guy at like his peak. But the downside is, maybe like a 240-ish batting average. But I think in that Miami lineup, which is, seemingly getting a little bit better, team's getting a little bit better here. I think if he can stay healthy and hit at the top of it, there's a lot of upside. Let's not forget that Jazz loses second base eligibility for next year. He did not play any second base this year. He's going to be outfield only. Going into next season, I have Jazz as my outfielder number 20 right now in my rankings. But I could see it moving down a little bit, maybe up a little bit, because just the injury history is really bad. If you go even back to like 2021, hamstring issue for Jazz, shoulder, he had a lower back strain last year. Then he had a stress fracture in his back last year. This year he was dealing with the toe issue. He was dealing with an oblique issue. It's just really tough with Jazz. I honestly think if you get him like as your outfielder 3, very, very great upside, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that in drafts. Probably going to have to take him as our outfielder number 2 and just hope that upside is there. If you've played it safe up until that point in your draft, I wouldn't mind if you took Jazz. But honestly, not somebody I'm going to go out of my way to get next year, especially with him losing second base and only being eligible at outfield. Let's move on, though, to, once again, arguably it's either Jazz or this guy, Sandy Alcantara, that, were the biggest, misses for the Marlins this year. But Sandy, same issue as Jazz, really wasn't fully healthy. So a lot of innings on his arms over the last 3 seasons. I think it finally built up, and we don't really I'm pretty sure that Sandy's missing all of next year now at this point. So not really a guy we're going to be talking about for 2024. We're really just going to be talking about him for, what he did this season and what we can expect in the future from Sandy. Honestly, I don't know if he ever fully gets back to that number one starting pitcher in all of fantasy baseball potential, but I could see him with a low 3s ERA, maybe getting back up to that 180 inning mark, hopefully with close to a K per nine, but most likely, a bit under that. And his whip should be solid as well. But, let's talk about what he did this year. 7 wins, 12 losses for Sandy this season, 4.14 ERA, 28 starts, 184 innings, 151 strikeouts with a 1.21 whip. I know he was coming off the boards this season pretty much as the number one guy. And it was just a tough year. It was a tough year to own Sandy, even if you traded, for him and you thought you were going to get an ace in the second half. It really didn't happen for him. He was pulling it together a little bit there towards the end, but just really not what we expected from Sandy this year. And once again, he's pretty much off the board for next year now. At this point, I don't think he'll be back at all next season. So just a really, really tough time here with Sandy Alcantara. I'll look forward to 2025, and hopefully he can get back to somewhat the player that we used to know him as. I don't think he'll ever be fully number one pitcher in fantasy baseball ever again, though. Let's keep things moving here with the Miami Marlins. Let's talk about Luis Arraez. Now, Arraez it's tough, in a category type league. He's not really helping you in too many different categories. Obviously, he's a huge standout in batting average, leading the NL again with a 354 batting average this season. The walk to strikeout ratio is immaculate. The guy only struck out 34 times in 147 games, 574 at bats to 35 walks. The 10 homers are okay. 71 RBIs are all right. 30 doubles are helping you in those points leagues, and the 3 triples as well as the 203 hits overall. So it's really tough for, Arraez in categories leagues where you're really only getting the help in batting average. The runs are okay, RBIs are okay, but for almost a full season, that's really not putting you over the top. Only 3 steals from Arraez. All-star again this year, great player, but it's just really tough when you're looking at drafting a guy like this because there's so many more options that are over the top. I have Arraez as my number 16 second baseman, which is really most likely where you're going to be drafting him at. Just if you've taken a real big hit in batting average going into that point in your draft and you need somebody that's just safe, sturdy, he could be a run standout, I guess, if they hit him towards the top of that lineup and, all things go right, Jazz stays healthy and, the rest of these guys just, keep it rocking and rolling. But then again, even at that, the RBIs aren't going to be great. Home runs aren't going to be great. So in those categories leagues, where Matt and I play most of our fantasy baseball head-to-head categories leagues, it's really a tough guy to own. But before we move on here and we talk about, Jesus Luzardo, Jorge Solair, and a lot of these other great players for the Miami Marlins, I do have a quick ad for you guys. Guys, I need to talk to you about GameTime. Have you ever tried to buy tickets to see your favorite artist or sports team and wound up being stressed out by how much of a hassle it can be? Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. That's why you need to check out the GameTime app. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Using the GameTime app is super rewarding with flash deals and last-minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, images and views of the seats you'll be sitting in. Also, their lowest price guarantee and event cancellation protection. I mean, there's a reason it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets and the lowest price is always guaranteed. All right, guys, let's get back into it. I teased one of these guys here, and, let's kind of been going back and forth from, bat to arm. Let's get back into those arms. Let's talk about Jesus Luzardo. Now, Jesus Luzardo is such a young, talented pitcher. Very, very good. Has great stuff, good fastball, good breaking stuff. Just had a lot of ups and downs to the season, but the overall numbers do look really, really good. I do have to admit. Win-loss, not great. The 10 wins, 10 losses for Luzardo. I love the 3.63 ERA, 32 starts, 178 innings with 208 strikeouts and a 1.22 WHIP. He didn't really kill you in and too many areas. The WHIP is a little bit higher than I liked, but 25 years old for Luzardo for most of the season. He's 26 now, going to be 26 for next season. I truly love the upside. I think there's going to be a season where Luzardo winds up competing for a Cy Young. I really, really believe in him that much. At starting pitcher for next year, I have Luzardo pretty high. I have him at 21. I think I could even see him moving up a couple of spots as I'm looking it over before everything's said and done. Just a guy that I really think we're going to be targeting as like a number 2 starting pitcher for next season because the upside is tremendous. He even pitched a little bit above his FIP. FIP is fielding independent pitching. It's an ERA indicator. His was a 3.55. As I mentioned, the 3.63 ERA is what he pitched to on the season, so that ERA even has room to come down a little bit. And through 18 starts last year, Luzardo had a 3.32 ERA. So let's do this. Let's combine those stats from last year and this year. So we're talking about 50 starts now. And let's just see what those numbers look like. I think it's like 278 innings with 279 innings, 328 strikeouts, a 3.52. The win-loss ratio isn't great, but that's not really so much his fault. You can only control so much with a 1.15 WHIP and a 3.40 FIP. I really love what the kid's capable of. And once again, this is just going to be a guy that I don't know where the market's going to be on him for Luzardo next year, but definitely somebody I'm going to be targeting. Definitely worthy of your number 2 starting pitcher. If you get him as your number 3, you're laughing to the bank because there's just so much upside for Luzardo. And I think if he can put together a full season, 30, once again, like a 32 start season like this, it's only going to be better than this year. I only see improvement. He's a student of the game. Looks like he loves to learn and just get better out there. So Luzardo is somebody that we're going to have a lot of fun with next year, in my opinion. Let's move on to another bat. Keep things going back and forth here, guys. Let's talk about Jorge Solair. Now, Jorge Solair isn't somebody that was a sexy pick for fantasy baseball this year. You probably got him really late in drafts for the most part. But, man, did he finally get things back on track after a few years where we weren't really sure what Jorge Solair was going to do. But on the year, Jorge Solair, 137 games, 504 at-bats, 77 runs, 24 doubles, 36 homers, 75 RBIs, and a 250 batting average. Very reminiscent of that 2019 season with the Royals. Not as many home runs or, counting stats as that year, but that year he did play a full 162. Solair did. And I really think Solair, at 32 years old next year, we know what he is. If you missed out on some power, you get him as like your outfielder number 3. Where do I have him? Let's see where I have him ranked at outfielder. Where do I have Solair? I have Solair at 35. Yeah, so you're talking about your outfielder number 3, potentially utility bat. He's going to help you in almost every category besides steals and batting average. The runs are most likely going to be pretty solid. He's going to give you a lot of power. The RBI should be, I think, even better than they were this year at 75. There's obviously 90 to 100 upside if, Jazz and Arias and everybody stays healthy and this team just really gets rocking and rolling. I could see Solair driving in a lot of runs. Even the batting average, he's a career 243 guy. He hit 250 this year. He's not dragging you down in batting average, Solair. I think there's, I don't want to say upside, but we kind of just know it's a lot of power if the guy stays healthy, which hasn't always been the case. But 3 out of the last, 5 years, you got at least 149 games. And I think it's safe to say you get at least 120 with Solair. Maybe he has that one IL stint during the season. But we really love the power, and I think he's not going to be a bargain in drafts. But if we're getting him at our outfielder number 3, our first utility bat, you could definitely do a lot worse than Solair. He'll be somebody that I'm definitely looking his way in drafts next year. Let's move on to the young sensation, the big giant man, Yuri Perez. 6'8", 220. Somebody that had a lot of hype coming into the year, and honestly, I truly think he lived up to every little bit of hype there was surrounding Yuri Perez. He was in that Andrew Painter, Grayson Rodriguez conversation for best pitching prospect coming into last year. And once again, let's talk about those numbers that as a 20-year-old Yuri Perez put up. 3.15 ERA, 19 starts, 91 innings, 108 strikeouts, 31 walks, a 1.12 whip. I don't like that the FIP is at a 4.11, but I know Yuri had some blow-up starts there, towards the end. And really, honestly, he threw 120-plus innings this year. His career high before that was 77. So, as you're young, building up that arm to get to those innings, sometimes you see a little bit of that fatigue. He was injured for a little bit, came back, and as I mentioned, when he came back, he was getting banged up a little bit. So with Yuri Perez, I really think sky's the limit. He gets to work with the Luzardo, a Sandy, and the rest of the young, good pitchers on this team. Miami's pitching staff, pitching coaching is very, very good. They work wonders with a lot of these young guys. I have Yuri Perez as my number 29 starting pitcher, so I think he's a high-end 3, a low-end number 2 even. I don't know how many innings he's going to give us next year. Hopefully it's around 150-ish, but that's going to be able to suffice. If he gives you the 150 of really, really strong production, and then you have to go out and just make sure you're a little bit active on the waiver wire, because if Yuri doesn't get a full year in, you at least have some guys that you picked up along the way to help, push you through. But honestly, I don't have a problem with anybody who's drafting Yuri Perez next year, taking him high. The upside's crazy. The upside is well over a K per 9 with the low 3s, high 2s ERA. The control's very good for a young 20-year-old. This is a guy that you're talking about 3 to 5 years from now, top 5 starting pitcher in the league. I don't think that's crazy to say, but the talent's there. He just really has to pull it together, stay healthy, and really does have that upside, as I'm mentioning, as a very, very high-end starting pitcher, not just for fantasy baseball, but in all of the MLB. Yuri Perez is a name that I absolutely love. Let's move on to somebody who, the Marlins acquired throughout the year and wound up being fantastic for them. It's Josh Bell, the big 6'4", 261-pound switch hitter who came over from Cleveland, I believe, but most well known for being a Pittsburgh Pirate to start his career. Josh Bell. Let's just talk about what he did in Miami for the last 53 games of the regular season. Had 200 at-bats over that time, 26 runs. He had 9 doubles, 11 homers, 26 RBIs. He hit 270. The strike-to-walk ratio wasn't atrocious, but it wasn't great with 20 walks to 53 strikeouts. But, I mean, Josh Bell always just somehow flies under the radar. He's a solid guy. He's got a good amount of power. The batting average is never really killing you when he's a career 260 guy. Honestly, I think if he stays over there in Miami coming up for this next season, could be a pretty good home for him. I don't think we're seeing that 37 home run season, especially playing half those games in Miami, more of a bit of a pitcher's park than a hitter's park. But you know what? He can give you 25 plus. The RBI should be good. As I said, the batting average isn't killing you. And if you play in like a corner infield type of thing, type of league, Josh Bell is going to be a great option. I have Josh Bell as my number 17 first baseman for next year. If you miss out, you take somebody late. I think Josh Bell can contribute. But before we move on here and we wrap this episode up with a couple of more pitchers and a couple of more bats as well, names like, we got Eddie Cabrera for you guys. Let's see who else we decide to get into. I definitely want to talk a little bit of Braxton Garrett as well. I do have one more ad for you guys. And we're talking about FanDuel. October baseball is back, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create a new account. Then you can get in the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get a W, predict what will happen next at bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with your $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys. So as I mentioned, we got a couple of more names here before we wrap things up. Let's go back into that pitching side of things and let's talk Edward Cabrera. Now, Big Eddie Cabrera is such another young, big, talented pitcher for Miami. Honestly, if this team ever really gets, I think they're one or two bats away, and this team could really make a push for, a World Series. And I'm not even joking. If all of these arms get it together, and like I said, they get another bat or two, there's really, really some great upside here. Now, Eddie Cabrera, as a 25-year-old, had a real mixed bag of a season. 7 wins, 7 losses, a 4.24 ERA across 20 starts, 99 innings, 118 strikeouts at the 1.44 whip. His thing is the walks. 66 walks in 99 innings is absolutely crazy. He really needs to work on that control. And if we look back at last year, he was on a better track with a 3.01 ERA across 14 games, 71 innings, 75 strikeouts, and he had a 1.07 whip. He really did take a step back, like that K per 9, that 4.1 K per 9 last year to 6.0 K per 9, not K per 9, walks per 9. This season, he really needs to find that control, and if he does, I think this kid, Scott, once again, sky is the limit. Really, he could have a monster strikeout ratio. The ERA could get a lot better if he's keeping the guys off of base, and I have him probably in a bargain spot where honestly I think he goes, because not a lot of people are going to look at him and realize that he has all the talent in the world. It's going to be more of, the ERA is high, the walks are really high, the whip is really high, so I'm going to try and avoid him. I have Eddie Cabrera as my number 50 starting pitcher. So honestly, I don't know if I'm going to take him there, but that's where, where I like him, in the sense of I might be a little bit higher than most on him, but I'm not going to really go out of my way to draft him. If I can get him as like my number 6 starting pitcher, that's where I'm going to be happy with it. And there's so much room to gain there. I'm not going to draft him at his upside, which is potentially number 4, number 3 starting pitcher in your rotation. But once again, a kid that's 25, ready to learn, going to come into camp, try and work on getting these walks down. Very, very big upside for, Eddie Cabrera, who's going to be 26 next season. Let's move on to somebody kind of exciting here, somebody that I like a lot. I know Matt loves him. Matt gave him the nickname Mr. Steal Your Girl last year, Jon Berti, when he led the league in steals. Didn't really play like a crazy amount of games this year, Jon Berti, but 133 for him, 388 at bats, 53 runs, 16 doubles, 3 triples, 7 homers, 33 RBIs, 16 steals, and he hit 294. Jon Berti is one of those guys that you picked up at the end of the year and just did the juice the orange type of situation. He was hot. You got him on your team. You got a bunch of steals. You got some homers even at the end. He had a 2-home-run game at one point during the last few weeks. The batting average was well above his career norm. Now, I don't really know where Jon Berti fits into this lineup going into next year. Maybe he gets some run at shortstop. That's what Roster Resource is showing me right now. But he will be, 34 for most of next year. Not really expecting anything crazy for him. This is a guy that you kind of take with your last pick. Going to have multiple position eligibility, and you just throw him in there. You throw him in there. You're going to get some steals. You're probably going to get some runs. The batting average, he's a career 260 guy, so I don't expect him to be around that mark. I don't think he's going to really drag you down in batting average. I think he's going to be about average in that area, no pun intended. But I like Jon Berti. I think there's upside there. Definitely a guy you could take with one of your last few picks and reap some rewards. Let's try and get through a few more of these names here, guys. Miami, I keep saying it, but very young team, very exciting team, a couple of moves away from doing something big next season, right? Let's talk about a guy who I honestly think needs to be a part of that rotation next year. It's Braxton Garrett. I know one of Matt's favorite arms last year. Sneaky guy coming into this year. Didn't really get off to a hot start, but finished the season very strong. Once again, Braxton Garrett, 6'2" lefty, 202 pounds. Just kid's been good. I'm going to give you his combined stats from the last 2 seasons. Honestly, it will probably surprise you. I know he's had some easy matchups here and there, but overall, you can't argue at 47 starts worth of stats. Win-loss record, if you use a little work, 12-14. As I mentioned, 47 starts, 3.63 ERA, very respectable, 247 innings, 246 strikeouts. So he's right there at that K per 9, and a 1.18 whip. And also a 3.64 FIP. Once again, fielding independent pitching, that ERA indicator, he's pitching right at it, which is, something that you really love to see because the talent stands true. And Braxton Garrett, just another guy, honestly, think we're going to get at a bargain next year. I have Braxton Garrett at number 63 starting pitcher for next year, which, once again, I think you're really going to get a lot of value on him at that point because the ERA is going to be good. The K per 9 is going to be right there. The control has been very, very strong for Braxton Garrett over the last few years. He's going to be 26 next year. Who says this is a kid that doesn't come out next year? And same thing with Eddie Cabrera, same thing with Luzardo. Take a step forward and be a guy that you look back at the end of the year and you're like, wow, Braxton Garrett made 32 starts and he had a 3.5 ERA and he pitched 180 innings and had 180 strikeouts and the whip was like a 1.12, a 1.15, something like that. And you really just have a chance here to get a lot of value on these Miami pitchers because it's a very good ballpark to pitch in. The coaching is very good there for pitching. They get to learn from each other. A lot of good starting pitchers on that team, and I'm sure Sandy's going to be in a very big mentor role next year as he's rehabbing and not pitching himself. He could work with the Luzardos and the Yuri Perez's and the Eddies and the Braxton Garretts. Honestly, there's going to be about 7 names for the 5 pitching spots next year, so we're going to really have to pay attention to which of these names get those spots. I'm going to see if I can sneak these, other 2 pitchers in here. Actually, let's go with one that is a keep your eye on him from next year, right? I might move around, change up what I was originally going for here, but we're talking about the starting pitching. Let's talk about a guy that could be very good. Let's talk about Max Meyer. Max Meyer came up last year, and he pitched okay. Didn't pitch great, but pitched okay. A kid that, is 6 foot, 200 pounds, righty, dominated in the minors. So let me give you some of those minor league stats. In 2021, Max Meyer in the minors, 6 wins, 4 losses, 22 starts, 2.27 ERA, 111 innings, 130 strikeouts, a 1.18 whip. Came out the next year in the minors, and he had 3 wins, 4 losses. Once again, I'm talking about Max Meyer, still pretty much a pitching prospect for the Miami Marlins. 3.69 ERA in 2022, 13 starts, 61 innings, 69 strikeouts, and an 0.96 whip. He did come up for 2 starts in 2022 before he got hurt. Once again, wasn't fantastic, wasn't atrocious. Gave up a couple of too many home runs. He had a couple of too many walks, so he didn't look great, but there's a lot of upside with this kid, Max Meyer. He's got really good stuff, and I think he'll be fighting for a spot in that rotation next spring training. So we'll kind of a guy keep your eye on and see where the thing goes. And I'll give you this last starting pitcher before I start to work my way out of here. Let's talk about Trevor Rogers. Trevor Rogers, just a guy that has so much talent, can't stay healthy. It's honestly tough to watch because his rookie season, he looked so fantastic. But, over the last few years, injuries have started to pile up, hasn't really thrown too many innings. This year, he had, a bicep issue that kept him out for an extended period of time. In 2022, it was the lat and back spasms. Even in 2021, had back spasms again. So Rogers might be the odd man out. He might be a guy that looks to get traded, but is a guy that has talent. I loved him this year. I took him in a bunch of different leagues. Obviously didn't pan out, but the kid is 6'5", 220, big, strong lefty. He's only going to be 26 next year. Just once again, to highlight that 2021 season, 2.64 ERA, 25 starts, 133 innings, only 46 walks, 157 strikeouts, a 1.15 whip. The talent is there, and it was a 2.55 FIP that season, so he was pitching even a little bit above a little bit worse than he should have been, and which those numbers are still fantastic. He threw 4 starts this year. I believe the last, one of the last 2, but one before he got hurt, looked pretty strong. Looked like he was maybe starting to turn a corner. I just want to see what Trevor Rogers winds up next year. Honestly, definitely a guy you can throw a dart at, especially if he looks good in spring training. I think it's a guy that will be able to get around SP 80. I probably have him a little higher than that. Where do I have Trevor Rogers for next year? Might have been a guy I kind of overlooked on this list, because I'm still doing all the fine tuning, making sure I have all the names. Oh no, Trevor Rogers as starting pitcher 98. Honestly, if he's going around there in drafts, your last starting pitcher, and it looks like he's going to have a rotation spot, could be a guy that throws 150 innings with 180 strikeouts with a 3.7 ERA and a WHIP of a 1.20, something like that. But the upside is even better. But that's kind of like the medium that you're thinking about when you're talking about a guy like Trevor Rogers. But all right, guys, that's pretty much it for me today. I appreciate you hanging in with me through, the solo episode. So once again, please be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. We appreciate all of our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Matt and I will be back. I'm not 100% sure what team we'll be doing next, but we should be back tomorrow with a new one. So make sure you're locked on until then. So guys, see ya.